everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Matt and Dwight Just Might, a podcast about, get this, two comedians talking about comedy. Who'da thunk, huh?
That's us, baby.
I am Matt Alano-Martin, and with me is my co-host,
Dwight Simmons. I'm here, baby, and we have big news. Big news up top.
Okay.
We have gone from the Zoom Basic to the Zoom Premium.
Yeah, we're not going to rush through the episode this time like we did last time.
Yeah, we sent out questions, and then we answered a half a question because that's what we had time for.
Yeah. And we actually will also name which program we're using now that we're actually paying for it. Like we were cagey about it last week.
Yeah,
like we're using like a free thing. We don't want to give them any but now that we're paying the privilege to use their product, we'll go ahead and say what it is, I guess.
First sponsor, Zoom. Thank you.
We're sponsoring them. We paid for it.
Yeah, it's a reverse sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to know what it's like to be this level of comedian, you get offered some reverse sponsorships. People will let you pay them.
Yeah, we'll say the name if you just pay this $120 or whatever the hell it was.
I can't wait until next week when we have to say actually Zoom's lawyers sent us a letter and said it's fine, if we use the software since we paid for it, but please keep their goddamn name out of our mouths.
Oh man,
I don't want to get slapped by a Zoom lawyer,
that I definitely cannot afford that premium subscription for a Zoom lawyer.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this up top before we get into recapping our shows for this past weekend. We did want to take another crack at last week's question, which was from Alex Schubert about what are bookers looking for? What can you try to do to get the best submission tape? What's your best policy to try to submit to different things for getting booked? Because we kind of rushed through it, and I don't disagree with anything that we said, right? But a big thing that we did is we kind of skipped over the very basic level, because he said in his question, besides the obvious. And I since realized, there's some people listening to this podcast, like newer comics, who may not understand what the obvious parts are.
Right.
Like we take for granted because we've been doing it, over a decade each. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that really quickly. And you feel free to jump into, we haven't coordinated this at all, but as a basic thing, last week we talked about, when talking about bookers for clubs, a recommendation is definitely going to take priority, but you still also are going to need to have a tape most of the time. And, I'd say at least half of the time, the booker's then going to want to see a tape. Getting a recommendation is going to get your foot in the door. It's going to get, okay, yep, I'll find that email, or I'll notice when their email comes in, because often it'll be a sort of thing, when you're trying to hook up another comic, say, email them, put in the subject line, so-and-so sent you, right? Mm-hmm. So that catches their attention.
Right.
But you still need to then have a good tape. So one thing I did want to talk about is for the baby comics. And it's also just, sometimes comics have been doing this for a while. We get a blind spot about our own shit,
Yeah.
So the basic thing with submission tapes, and this is from talking to bookers of clubs, bookers of festivals, our own experience from sending stuff out and getting feedback. First and foremost, man, first of all, you should be doing well in your tape that you send. It's always amazing to me when people send a clip where they're doing mediocre to poor,
right?
And they're just counting on the fact that well, yes, this audience wasn't feeling it,
but the booker will get it. Yeah,
the booker will get it because these jokes are so genius. These bookers are so these jokes are so genius that it'll shine through. This was just a bad audience. This sort of rationalization that starts happening, right? You should be doing very well to killing in your submission tape. And that's the thing that I was talking about, how it's so hard. That's the white whale of it, getting that that. Yes, everything hits. Everything was exactly how I wanted it. That's what we're always chasing. It's always amazing the clips that we will see for random things. We both book shows, book Don't Tell now, and I used to run a monthly at the Comedy Attic, and from the festival and all the kind of stuff, where someone sends you a tape and they're eating their balls. It is unreal. It is unreal. So number one, don't eat your balls.
That's just more life advice in general.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
I don't want to kink shame. If you want to eat your, I'm talking about metaphorically, Yeah.
I mean, if you got the flexibility, do you, baby? But
yeah,
man, it should be harped on because, the tape should be your baby. I think last week you mentioned that, you used the same tape all year because it is hard to get one where you're killing and it translates to tape. Sometimes you go up and you do well and you watch the video back and the sound's off, or people walking in front. It's not just performer to audience. There's all these other things that make it difficult.
Yeah.
So I also like what you said last week about, make it a goal to get good tape, not just for festivals, but to get actual work. And it's important to send a relevant tape to what you're submitting for. So, if you're submitting for a feature set, this is what I did. I send, 15 to 20 minutes, even though a feature set may be 30.
Yeah.
I just don't think people are watching that full set, but it's important to, what I did early on was I'd put, here's a 15 to 20 minute set, and then please let me know if you want to see more, or a different 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll send that your way. Just letting them know that you have the time and that you can do the job if you get booked.
Yeah, exactly. And since you touched on this, let's go ahead and talk about the actual message that you send out as well, because we kind of skimmed over that a little bit, but this is something we should go into depth, at least for a few minutes.
Right.
Is exactly what you said. Most bookers are not going to watch. Now, if it's a festival and they're saying they need to see 5 minutes, your clip should be at least 5 minutes. Don't send them a 3-minute and be like, I got more if you want, no, you're automatically out in that point. But for booking at a venue or something like that, or a show, a one-nighter show or a club, what you do is exactly what I do. I send them a link, and it's whatever clip that I'm most proud of. Sometimes it's a feature set. Sometimes it's I've been sending my headlining set from the Comedy Fort back in January, but that's almost a year old now. So I'm going to need to go through the archives of what I've been taping this year and find a new one that I like that much.
Right.
And start sending that. But there is always, I think no one's going to watch the bookers aren't going to watch the whole thing. They might skip around in it and be like, okay, this is good. Or they'll watch the first 5-10 minutes and be like, all right, they got it. Maybe jump to the end even. But it is one of those things, like keeping the message super brief. Like this is, people have asked me this before, and if anyone wants to message me on social media, I'll just send you my template that I use. Please feel free to change it up a little bit so isn't exactly, but I mean, there's not much to it. It's basically, hello, whoever I'm addressing, right? My name, quickly, like I'm a comic based out of, Bloomington, Indiana. I'll be routing through, this week. I would love to do I'm routing through on my way to Colorado this week, would love to do your show, or, this is like, I'm going for a specific like monthly show or something like that.
Right.
Or, I would love to be considered for your club, whatever the next line is going to be. And then I have my credits in basically a sentence or 2 sentences. And I understand, like, younger comics, if you don't have credits, that's a hard thing. You're missing this sort of sales pitch to a certain extent. But I just keep it really brief, like one sentence, like, I've got multiple albums in rotation of Sirius XM. I've been on the Bob and Tom show several times, and then a third thing, whatever the third thing is I want to use, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
you want to be as specific as possible in your message, because the more work a booker has to do, the least likely they are. It's just like a ticking clock. Like if they can read your email in 60 seconds, then that would be ideal.
Absolutely. 60 seconds and less. And the specific thing, like you said, is if you just like, I just said a bad thing, honestly. Like, I mean, my example I was giving.
Oh, you can curse. It's okay.
No. I made it a little vague. And it should be like, even with a club, I will, clubs, it's a little different if you're just trying to get in with that club, but you still want to give them specific dates. Like it's called the avails. If someone's a brand new comic, that's called avails, which is short for availabilities, right? Of when you can come do that show. But like people who send, I'll just use this as an example because like when if you run like a weekly show, right? Like let's say we'll use the Sunday show in Indianapolis, for example, because it's a very popular in-demand weekly show. Comics all over the country want to do that show, right? If you just email those bookers, that collective of comics who run that, and just say, I'd love to do the show sometime with no specific date, they are way less likely to book you, as opposed to, can I do this one? Like I'll be routing through, or I have that one open. I would love to do that specific Sunday. That is like 110 times more effective than an open-ended. And the same thing with clubs too. When I send my avails to clubs, it will be like my open weekends in January, February, March, or whatever, the 3 months coming up. But I also, even if I have all the weekends open, I limit it to a couple of weekends. I don't send them, right now, just starting on February and March for next year, I will still just select it down to a couple. And just like for that month, and be like, I can come these two, And so if you do give them something to focus in on as a booker, then it's easier on them. But and it's also the open-ended shit. Just they don't they don't care. You're not a priority, obviously, because you're just like never. As opposed to, I'm a comic. I'm coming through. I need a show this date. Can I do your show on that date?
Yeah. Here's a clip. Here's a headshot.
Do you send your headshot in the initial email?
I've started sending it in the initial email just outside. It's just a thing I started doing earlier this year, like to begin this year, just because I had seen people post. Bookers do this on social media where they complain about how the wrong way to send emails.
Yeah.
And like I'm pretty good about, keeping it short, but it's just an extra step, they can, I don't
have to write you back and go, okay, cool.
They don't have to do more work. They can just, click a file if they want it.
Right. Yeah.
You go to a lot of like comedy club websites and they're like, hey, send your avails to this email and include your headshot, your bio, availability, yada, yada, yada. It's just one of those things where you want to, like I said, be as specific as possible in each particular booking request that you're doing.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And like you said, if a booker is got specific things that they want, give them those specific things. Don't leave out half of them.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing, like I said last week, about if a club is only a Friday, Saturday club, in my list of avails, I don't send them Wednesday through Sunday date ranges. I don't put like January 10th through the 15th is available. It's like, nope, January 13th, 14th or whatever, and so I think it's great. I don't send a headshot along with it, but maybe I will start doing it. At least a link to one. I always send, there's always a link to my clip, and like exactly what you said. There's I have additional clips available if you're interested or whatever. Depending on what it is that I'm going for. But yeah, that's a good point that I haven't really thought about, is sending like a link to your headshot on your website, which you should have a website. I know everything is done through social media, but you can have my website's a free website through WordPress. Comedian websites do not have to be fancy.
No. You're not driving a ton of traffic through your website. You're not John Mulaney, so it's not like they have to handle a server request.
Yeah, it's a place that just where all that stuff resides, though. It's where the clip is, it's where the headshots are, it's where your tour dates are. It's a thing that they can, with one click, not clicking through all your social media bullshit, or your link tree. I understand link trees are incredibly efficient for social media, but if you send somebody to a link tree, you're asking them then just to do a series of other clicks.
Right.
And as a booker, nope, just right to the fucking your not your podcast, but your website. And just like, here it is, boom, boom, boom. Like, and again, within another 30 seconds of looking at your website, they can see your other tour dates. And like, oh, this is a real comic.
That's the thing. It's like,
oh, they're playing those other clubs. Okay, cool.
Yeah. You want the perception that, you want to convey through your short email that you are the real deal.
And that wants to be doubled up again when they go to your website by like, just lie. Just have a bunch of fake credits. Fake credits. Fake. Who's gonna find out, really?
It's my favorite April Fool's thing that I stopped doing, but I would post a picture of Arsenio Hall and say, can't believe I got booked on Arsenio Hall. People will still be like, congratulations. I was like, okay, well, you're tone deaf, but this joke wasn't for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's important.
They're also congratulating Arsenio on getting a new show. Like, it's
that boy's still moisturized. He ain't aged since coming to America. Good for him. But perception, man.
Yeah.
Perception.
And again, in all reality, don't lie. Don't make up a fake credit. Don't do any of that horseshit, because that will permanently damage you. Like when that comes out. But also, but you should present yourself as an actual comedian, not someone who does comedy. If you're going to do this for real and you're trying to get bookings, go ahead. Sorry.
100% agree. Before we move on, definitely, I know we talked about references. You need to ask the person to double check and make sure. Just because you worked with someone doesn't mean you can use their name to get booked. You need to ask them
100%.
every time you're going to use their name. It's important that you ask them before you do that. It's not
Yes.
just carte blanche. Like even good friends that take me on the road, it's like, hey, can I use your name for this club? And they'll be honest with you. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not in that club. This is not how that club's booked. Or you'll get more details and you won't piss people off by just dropping their name as a reference.
Yes,
I hate that.
This is maybe the most valuable thing we've said on the podcast so far, because I think there are people that are pretty far in their comedy careers who do that shit. And it's like that. One of the main things is also just getting more info about that club. When you, if you're in, we do it with each other. Like I see you get into places that I'm not in yet. I'm like, hey man, what's it like? Like, can I use you as an in? Like, and then sometimes we get information back from each other, like, yo, you don't want to do that club. Like it's like the money's terrible, or it's not worth it, or just because I did it doesn't mean that you want to do it, or like, yes, and here's how you actually get in. It's not what it says on the, don't go through the website because they won't tell you that.
Right.
Like, there's different levels of vouching, but yeah, you cannot just use
fire off.
Yeah. Which is a thing that we know people have done before, where they're like, they've said, I'm friends with, they don't even say it that way. They go, they see that some comic that they opened for one, they hosted for once, did that room, and then they use that as an in. We've known people that have tried to get as an opener for when that comic's coming back to that club. Like, oh, we worked together. You worked together once. Like,
they don't know who you are. They don't remember you.
Yeah.
I remember it's a few years ago. I'm not going to say either comic's name, but there was a comic that was living in Indianapolis that used another comic's name that had gotten passed for JFL for their JFL audition tape. And so, like, the way JFL works, just for laughs, is at least for the submitting level. So you can get referenced by a comic that's already done it. So, a couple of comics have recommended me. I haven't gotten it, but that sort of lie, if I was just like, hey, Tom Takar said I can use his name and submit this link, which is what that person did.
Yeah.
Basically, ended this person's career.
Awesome.
You cannot do this.
Yeah. And well, yeah. And so it's the same thing. Like I got recommended and I got to submit to JFL and didn't get it as well. But I also, as the co-founder of Limestone Comedy Festival, got asked to make some recommendations. And that's like, they're going to know, like, they know where the recommendations come from. It's not blindly out of the blue. Like if it was like me recommending you, which you were one of the ones that me and Jared recommended. We recommended like 5 comics from the Midwest for them to check out, and so you were one of them. Just so you know, Christmas is coming up, so anyway. No, but if you had just done that, you'd be like, oh, Jared and Matt recommended me. They got the email from us of who we recommended.
Right.
Like,
they got receipts.
Or the
they
main
got
person,
receipts,
they got receipts. Like, you can't do that. And I'm glad it ended that person's career, because that's not how you do it. I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but this is all very valuable, and I hope that the comics listening to this find it valuable, and the regular comedy fans are like, Jesus, move on to something else, less technical, less very specific. But before we do that, I do want to just touch on a couple more things about your submission tape. Obviously, you should be doing well in it. You should also be able to be clearly seen and heard. Again, we get really good about rationalizing why a clip is okay. But if you're a talking ball of light on the stage, that's not going to cut it. A big part of comedy, even if you're not that big of an act out person, is facial expressions. They're going to want to see what you look like. With most cameras nowadays, that's not a big problem. That was more of like the older generations of video cameras and stuff like that would be an issue. But also, if there's a lot of chatter, like either from the back of the room, or you just have your camera set up next to a table and you're hearing the server taking drink orders all the time, don't send that clip.
No, too distracting.
Do not send that clip. And a way to get around that, and this is just like a pro tip, is everyone who has a smartphone has a fairly good audio recording device on their smartphone right now. And it will also keep your time. So if you're not using your iPhone or whatever as your video camera in the back of the room, take your phone up on stage, put it on the stool, record the audio from the stage in that audio file, and then you can sync it up with the video later.
Yeah.
And I fixed so many clips like that, where either the room, because it was like too big and boomy and echoey or whatever, or there was just like, I fucked up and put my camera next to the table of comics who can't stop fucking talking during a show.
You're trying to discern who said he ain't shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm breaking it down like the Zapruder film.
Yes.
Like, all right, we're gonna run this through some algorithms. I've seen a lot of CSI and NCIS. We can separate these vocal files.
Yeah,
and find out who said that. No,
it was a top. He was sitting here. She was sitting there.
Yeah, I've got
this person will never work in the city again.
There's a 3D recreation of the club. A seating chart. No. But that's a simple thing that you can do. I know a lot of people like to use their phones to videotape. Do you use your phone to videotape your sets?
I do. Yeah, I do. It's actually the reason I bought a phone, like a new phone, a couple of years ago. So was to, the phone I had was like the Samsung prototype 1 XL V, whatever the fuck. So like
it was a Razor. You can say it was a Razor. It was.
I had the Motorola Razor.
The Sidekick. You had the Sidekick.
Now I couldn't afford the Sidekick, man. But yeah, I I upgraded my phone so that I could film in all different types of light, and it has, typically good sound. These new phones do it all. So, but I like the idea of having 2 separate cameras to, definitely getting video and then one for getting better sound.
Yeah,
that's how they do comedy albums, man. They got like 4 microphones set up.
Yeah. So even if you're using your phone as your camera, then getting like some sort of simple recording device that you can dump easily digitally into your computer, which I'm sure is probably not that expensive, that you can just bring up on stage with you or whatever. And I know this sounds like a lot of work just to get a clip, like all the things that we just discussed, but that's all the work that goes into it. And once you get a good clip, it can pay off big time with a lot of work. So it's worth investing in for sure. Okay, that's all I want to talk about. We spent another half hour on last week's question.
Man, he really stumped us with that one today.
Yeah. Schubert, you're not allowed to send any more questions. They're too nuanced. They're too...
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into something that you almost kind of touched on it a little bit with like the etiquette of how you ask for referrals is very close to the thing that we are going to talk about today's episode. But before we do that, let's do a quick recap. Where were you this weekend? What were your shows?
Oh man, so I had my own show at Googman House Brewing in Indianapolis. It was great. It was the first Friday that they've given us. We had about 55 people there. Super fun, man. It's a good room. It's not perfect, but it is a good room for, a DIY comedy show. And I'm very happy with it. Right. Shanda Sung came up from Bloomington, and she's delightful. She's so funny.
She is. Yeah.
And so, I run it like a true showcase. Everyone does the same amount of time. And yeah, we had a good time. I got a little saucy, I host the show, so that's like, not to say that it's easy, but it's just, you go up, you set the table, and then you just have to remember everyone's name. Reset the room and have a couple of holiday beers in between. So
man. And so as the host, if it's showcase and everybody's doing the same time, as the host, you do an hour up top and then they each do 5 minutes, right? Is that right?
Yes, I run it like an Atlanta showcase. An hour of crowd work, and I'm lighting people from the back, lighting people late. So yeah, that was fun. And then, the next night, where was I? Oh yeah, I did Bombs Away. We talked a little bit about it last week. It was fun. They were a little tight there in Cincinnati.
Really?
They were a little tight. So they're more work than you go in expecting, but they were tight for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's a short set. It's 30 minutes. So I stick to my time. I ended up doing 42. Like the next one's gonna get them. Yeah, I'm a masochist. So, y'all a little tight. Let me do an extra 12 minutes.
Were they tight the entire, like they never loosened up? They were just like it was pulling teeth the entire time?
They loosened up a little bit.
Okay.
There were some big pops. There were some really what's distracting sometimes in crowds is that like there are people that are like really super into the show, and then there's just like a section in the middle. It would be like four tables that are just like, what did we do? Why did we make these decisions? Why did we pick this thing to do on Friday night?
Yeah.
And so, like, you got a guy up front that's just everything you say, you can't do anything wrong. But you know where your mind goes when you're
As
in
a
the
comic.
trenches. You're just
Yeah.
like, I should fucking loosen up.
It doesn't even have to be a section. It could be you could be doing well with everybody, and then there's one table that's not into it, and you're focusing on the one table that's not into it. It took a long time for me to learn not to do that.
Yeah.
Man, I had a similar experience. I mean, I texted you a little bit, man. I was at the Looney Bins in Wichita Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and it was wild, man. Thursday show, great. Friday early show, amazing. Like
Yeah.
really, those two shows.
How were the
great.
turnouts?
They were good, man. Like they were
Okay.
pretty good. Like yeah, like a couple of late shows were like a little light, but all the other shows, like the Saturday early show, sold out unfortunately because it was brutal for me. Like it was sold out with people that did not like anything I was doing. Man, it was the Friday late show, and it was one of those things where everyone complained about it. Like the host was complaining about them.
Gotcha.
I complained about it. Like the headliner complained about them, but then the headliner also like destroyed. The headliner was Sean Jones, who's a guy who's been doing it for almost 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Super high energy, super funny. Like he really, really great hang, really nice guy too. Like had a lot of good perspective on being in the business this long and that kind of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, he's like, I leave it all out there on the stage. And it's true. Like he comes out so high energy, so quick. There's probably, I would say, for the first 20 minutes of his hour, there's not more than like 10 to 15 seconds of setup before he's to the punchline.
Oh geez.
It is so fast. It is boom, 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 big energy. And so, but even like, and observing it from the room, I'm like, well, he's destroying. Like the Friday late show, they didn't like me at all. Like Friday late show and the Saturday early show, they just kind of stared at me like I was an alien. It was really crazy and not great. It was one of those things like, all right, well, I'm only doing 30. I mean, I did my time, I get through it. The Saturday late show, some of them were it sounded more like your show. Like some of them were really on board from the jump. Some of them were really, every now and then I could get the whole room on certain things, but there was a lot of just kind of like judgy, like arms crossedness kind of going on.
That's almost worse because you're like, am I doing like I would rather the whole audience hate me than to have like the mix. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like in the moment I'm like, all right, so these jokes are hitting, but maybe just not for this crowd.
It was so interesting, and I can't remember if it was you or someone else I was texting about it. And because I don't have a therapist right now, so I have to text other comics whenever the shows happen. But the crazy thing was like there was like the Friday late show, there was a moment halfway into my set, I was like, I can try to like rev up my energy and try to fill this gap. Right. And like, but then I just made the decision not to. I was like, nope, I am performing. I'm not just up here telling my jokes, just talking, not just like I'm putting my energy out there. I'm doing my thing. And they're just not participating. That was the thing. I would literally try to do a little crowd work and be like, anybody married, like nothing. Right. And then Sean, who's the headliner, he had some bits about being married, and he would ask the crowd, and then suddenly there's a bunch of fucking married people in the crowd. Where did they come from? Like they just decided, which I've only ever run into that when I've opened for famous people, and God bless Sean, he's a great comic, like he's really, really good at what he does. But he's not famous. Right. But like when I've opened for a Fortune Feimster, or someone like that, where they've come specifically to see the famous person and they're like, we have to sit through this bullshit. We came to see the famous person.
Exactly.
That doesn't happen all the time, but it does occur sometimes in that sort of scenario. It was like that. It was very bizarre. But luckily, so it was a very up and down weekend. And Biggs, who's the GM, and Wiz, who's the bartender there, and they're also comics, so I think they get it. Right. They were both like really great weekend. Great shows. I'm like, were those great shows? Like,
do you know what great means?
Well, it just made me wonder. Like, are their audiences always that hot and cold? Is this just a regular weekend for them? And they've learned that, like, okay, it's like we get a lot of people in here who are not comedy fans for whatever reason at the
Yeah.
comedy club. And their barometer now is just like, I didn't flip out on the audience. I did my time. I didn't,
Yep.
go off on everybody because they weren't laughing. I just stayed in my lane. If that's what they consider like a great show,
Yeah.
is that I was professional? Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
I think it means a lot because I think Biggs sits in the back of the room and watches the shows.
He watches a lot of the shows. Yeah.
And so, to have him be able to discern that this is actually, a mid crowd
Yes.
is a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, and I just want to say also, Biggs just had some pretty serious health issues, and he was freshly out of the hospital and right back to work running this comedy club. So hopefully everything continues on the up and up for him, because he is a really great dude. He's like one of the most lovably gruff dudes I've ever encountered. Like he's kind of, I think he'd be okay with that description. He kind of has a little bit of like a, not bust your balls element, but there's a little bit of a gruffness to him, but it's very teddy bearish in a way. So hopefully Biggs continues to be on the mend. Real quick, and we'll get into our question though. Sunday it was Oklahoma City, and it was night and day. It was, I think I texted you that this episode might be when I announced my retirement from comedy.
I was like, that was quick. We joked about you retiring last week, and you're like, I was one day in Wichita. You're like, it's happening.
Yeah, well, it was 2 days. The first day in Wichita was great, but anyway, no. But man, Oklahoma City, I got to do Bricktown Comedy Club, which is part of a large chain. They also do Summit City and Fort Wayne and Skyline, and a bunch of clubs all across the country are all owned by the same company. And first of all, they just run their shit so professionally. Like the green room's amazing. There's snacks. Like the minute you get there, are you hungry? Would you like to eat? Here's the menu. Like they just really treat you, and not just like, like every level. Host, it doesn't matter who you are if you're on the show, and also locals, because I did a brunch show for them, their very first ever brunch show. We did a 2:00 show, had probably about 60 people there, so it was pretty good for like the first time out on a brunch show.
Great.
Yeah, and I was headlining it, and then had two really fun locals. Man, I should have looked this up. I'm sorry.
I love their culture, man. You go to Fort Wayne, and they have like snacks in those little tubbies, and they're separated. It's not just like, here's some candy.
It's not leftover Halloween candy. They clearly bought these specifically for the screen room.
We got Starburst in this drawer, and if you want Skittles, they're in this drawer.
Yeah, and here's all the chocolate you would ever want. But one thing I do want to say is also, like, they came in there. I had two locals, at a local host and local feature, and both were great. And I'm sorry, the host's name was Cullen. I think that was his right. God damn it, sorry. I should have looked this up. I'm sorry if you guys are listening to this. Very funny local comics. I'm very tired, and as I told Dwight before we started recording, I think I'm also coming down with something, so I'm not feeling great. I'm going to use that as my excuse for being an inconsiderate asshole right now.
Matt and Dwight just might forget your name, baby. Might just be coming down with something.
I might be coming down with something. You don't know. Come on now. I feel real bad about that. I'm sorry. Anyway, but my point being that they also were getting the star treatment, and they're regulars at that club. They come in there all the time, but they're designated person for our green room.
Yeah.
Are you guys hungry? Not like, you're locals, you don't get to eat the food.
Yeah.
Same thing. They treated them just as beautifully and nice. And it was like, it's always a very welcoming environment. And then the show was great.
Are you a fan of that? I know I could probably name 5 comics that would be like, you got to go through the ringer, you got to pay your dues, you got to walk in and not get made eye contact with.
No,
I love it.
Well, these people had been passed at their two different levels that they had, they've been passed at their local club, and they earned it. They both were good. They were both really great.
Yeah.
And, as the headliner, I set the show, and as it was a brunch show, they didn't specifically want it to be a 90-minute show. They were fine with it being a little bit shorter, but I gave the MC 15. I gave the feature 30. The feature thought she was just doing 20. And I was like, no. I was like, do you have 30? Do you want to do 30? She's like, yeah. I was like, do 30. I was like, I don't need to do an hour at a brunch show. Like, I'm fine at doing 15, 30, 45. And I think I wound up doing like 52 or whatever. I'm on that Dwight Simmons clock.
Time is a flat circle, friend.
But it was really great, and the show was super fun. I sold a ton of merch. There was a lot of older people there, and actually still turned out great. It was really good. Julie Drake was the name of the feature. I just
Oh
pulled it
yeah,
up.
I
She
love
was
Julie.
great. Yeah, she was really great. It's my first time ever meeting her, actually. And now I'm trying to figure out who the and Chandler Roan was the MC.
Okay.
I'm so bad that I'm sorry that I could not think of your guys' names, but I did want to get their names in the podcast because they were both great. But you talk about going through the ringer and all that kind of stuff. No, these comics clearly had earned it in their local
I love
scene.
it.
So I was happy to have them be treated with the same dignity and respect as a no-name traveling headliner coming in to do a punch show. Real quickly, I do want to also say, and I know this is maybe the curse of having the not free version, is that we're going to babble forever, or at least I'm going to.
Or just yeah, just more editing, but that's
Yeah, I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you leave all this in.
Yeah, definitely. We're
No,
doing.
no, we can wrap it up too, I think, because the question of the week, I think, is pretty cut and dry.
Yep.
And so Sunday night at Bricktown, I then hosted for Ben Brannard. And it was really a great surprise because also traveling through was Andrew Rudick from Cincinnati. And
Rudy.
so he did a 10-minute set. And then Zach Bennett, who I've not seen for a couple of years, but I met randomly in Texas at Altercation Festival, was traveling with Ben Brannard as his feature. And it was the hang that you want.
Yeah.
A bunch of comics from all over happen
Yeah.
to be in the same city at the same time. They all do the show together. And then, Andrew had to drive to Tulsa that night, but the rest of us went out and had like the late night diner hang. It was like
Nice.
what you want from a comedy hang. I mean, just everybody just kind of like being cool, man.
Yeah.
And Ben was great, and his crowd was unbelievable. Like he is gotten very, very famous in the last couple of years from TikTok,
Hmm.
and he packed it out, almost sold out the show on a Sunday night, and
That's
his
awesome.
crowd was amazing. Like they were just I was like, I want to film my next special in
For his audience.
in 10-minute increments of opening for because that's how good they were. They were just unbelievable. And so those two shows, the brunch show of me doing almost an hour, headlining, getting in my groove, doing my thing, and then coming out and doing a tight 10 hosting and
I
just
love it.
being, the guy keeping the show going. Both of those like saved my soul. They were like the antidote
That's
to Wichita,
yeah, because you got to do the full gamut. You got to do 10 minutes, you got to do feature sets, which are 30 minutes, and then you got to do, I think you said 52.
Yeah, I think that's
So
what it came in at. Yeah.
those are it's wildly different pace sets,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're working on stuff. But
Yeah.
it's nice after doing. I like this if you do like a week of headlining sets and then you get to go do 10. You feel invincible,
Yeah.
but you also forget what time it is. You're like, oh, I'm done
Yeah.
already. Okay.
Yeah. And I do this thing too. We may have to just postpone the question of the week for this week till next week, actually, because I think that we spent a lot of time clearing up last week's questions. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I
Okay.
don't want us to go over an hour. That's the thing is I know I've been
Okay.
very rambly, but I feel like everything that we've talked about has been pretty important. I don't
Yeah.
want you to get all mad with power in the editing room, basically.
We got everything. You should see the editing floor.
Just ones and zeros everywhere,
It
all
is
over the floor.
yeah. We got time. We got time. Did you
Yeah.
want to? Did you want to do comedy goss, or did you want to do?
Well, I one thing I wanted to say is that we do want to talk about our upcoming shows.
Okay.
So let's get into that, and then we'll see how much time we have. And mine will be very brief because after this weekend I'm at the Looney Bin in Little Rock, and so I'm headlining Wednesday and then featuring Thursday through Saturday, and then I'm done. I don't have any more shows for the rest of the year. I'm going to take a couple of weeks off. I'm not going to do anything.
I love it. We know that's not true.
Holidays. No, I'm
Not how
I
you.
think I'm gonna force myself into not doing anything. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
limestone work I need to do, but as
Yeah.
far as grinding, #grinding, I think I'm just gonna hang out at home with my dog and my wife and holiday shit. That's my plan.
I love that, man. I'm the exact same for me. I am at Helium in Indianapolis, headlining the upstairs room this Thursday, and then I'm calling it for the year.
Nice.
So I'm done. We just have family Christmas stuff.
Mhm.
And then once we get into the new year, I can really turn it back up because I'm filming my special at the Comedy Attic middle of January. So I do need some mental respite before diving back into that for,
Yeah.
21 straight days.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, I think that's a good thing to talk about too. Is I just was jokingly talking about the hashtag grind. A lot of comics will always go out and do shows all the time, and you do have to give yourself. You got to give yourself physical and mental health breaks,
Yeah,
or else you're not gonna be performing at your top.
true.
And then also just inspiration wise,
Inspiration wise, and
you need your
letting
brain to go other places.
letting the material breathe, and
Mhm.
then readdressing it and falling back in love with it. So you're
Yeah.
not just like 6 months straight with this material, and then by the time you're ready to record, you're like, if I gotta say this joke one more time,
Yeah,
I'm
because
burning it all down.
the audience can smell it, even if you're very
Yeah,
good at doing it and very good at performing. Because a big part of it is like acting like you just thought of this funny thing, but you've actually been saying it for 2 years.
right.
You know, um, when you are at that breaking point with a bit,
Yeah,
the audience can pick up on it. And so
yeah.
I'm glad that you are taking that break and going to come into it like fresh. I think that's great. Yeah. So I do think. Do you think we can get to this question of the week and get it done in 15 minutes?
We'll see.
The etiquette.
I think
Okay,
so.
cool.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
do it.
Every one of our episodes is going to end with a cliffhanger where we have to finish the question of the week from the week before the next week.
Oh man.
Do you want to set this up or do you want me to set it up?
You set it up.
Okay.
Because
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say their name because they did post this publicly on their Facebook page. But our friend Steph Bright is a comedian out of Arkansas, Missouri, where they live like right on the border, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But working, traveling comedian based there. They had gotten an unsolicited DM from someone they'd never met before who was asking them for advice on how to get into comedy festivals. And now on the surface, the message, it was from a guy and who they had no mutual friends. So there wasn't even that. It wasn't even like, hey, we're both friends with Dwight. I see that you did this specific festival. Do you mind if I ask you? It was just, and it was also not even a specific festival question.
Right.
It was just a general, I would love, can I get some advice from you on my brand new comic? And there's also some really dumb bullshit in there. Like, I just graduated college and I'm a full-time professional comedian.
Yeah, it was wild.
And it's like, well, then how do you not, if you're a full-time professional comedian, how do you not know how to submit to festivals?
Yeah. You don't even know what full-time or professional is. It's also important to bring up that he misspelled her very easy to spell name.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
STEF.
Yeah.
How you throwing extra letters in Steph, dog?
Yeah, he just got carried away. He was very, and so she blurred out his picture and his name, if I recall correctly, right?
Yeah.
But screen capped it and just said, "Men, don't do this," right?
Right.
And this turned into one of the biggest comedy shitstorms we've seen in a long time, as far as like not being at like a Chappelle level, like Twitter as far as not trending on Twitter, like this, as far as Facebook comedy beef.
Oh, I missed it so much.
Comics from everywhere started commenting on this, taking her side, going after her for like not just giving, why are you being such a bitch? Why are you not just giving this guy advice? He didn't say anything wrong, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, I have my take on it. Do you have your take on it? Do you want to?
It was real. A lot of the comments, there were like 600. So obviously didn't do a full dive in, but all of the comments that I read, the majority had hashtag not all men energy. And that's not, so like, I don't agree with, I don't agree with the way that Steph did this, but I also am not going to sit here and act like I know what it's like to be a woman just existing in the world or in comedy. And so for people to, jump down our throats, like, this is the wrong way, this is how you handle this. If she's going to do this, she blurred out his picture. She didn't put him on blast. She's like, hey, don't send unsolicited messages to anyone. And I understand that. We've been doing this for a while. You probably get crazy messages. I just got a crazy message last night about—
You sent it to me, yeah.
About trading Xbox games for a host spot on one of my shows. I'm just like, yo, man. And honestly, my first inclination was to screenshot this and post it on Facebook. So I
So
get it.
you totally understand, yeah, exactly
I
where
get
that
it.
comes from, of just being like, can you believe this motherfucker right here?
Yeah,
And then you want to
of
post it.
course.
Yeah, of
Of
course.
course.
Yeah.
I don't have to agree to understand why she did this.
Right.
And I also don't have to be like, as a man, I don't have to be like, oh, uh, I think one of the comments was like, oh, this is why chivalry's dead because of comments like this. It's like, okay, like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Like, yeah, I bet she would have helped him out with advice if he was a Chad, like shit like that. Yeah, it was really fascinating because again, like, we don't know what it's like to be a woman in the world, but we have women in our lives, and both our wives and people in our families, and then also friends of ours that are women, and the amount of shit that they have to deal with
It's
online
wild.
is through the roof, and it's crazy. And so again, I 100% get of just being like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, don't do this. Like, this is, she didn't, literally all she said is, dear man, please don't do this. Sign the management, right?
Yeah.
Like, she was trying to be funny about it, I think, a little bit, but like the kind of signing the management seemed like
It is a
funny.
joke.
It is a joke thing, right? But it's like it grew into this other thing, and it's like, it's her right to post that. It's her right. Like, again, like, she doesn't owe it. No one owes anyone,
Right.
And just because this guy worded it politely, the fact that he wrote a female comic out of the blue that he has no mutual friends with, that he does not know, and claiming to, if it was like, I'm brand new at comedy, I don't know anything, would have been more on, it would have been less suspicious. Would have been less suspicious. Him claiming to be a full-time professional comedian and then messaging this woman, it just reeks of, this is quickly going to become sexual harassment, or and 100% women should always have their guard up for that, of course. Online particularly, right? And so, but it was crazy that it really brought out this fucking knuckle dragging, like, men's rights, like it was insane. Like, and here's the thing is also, the comics that were giving her shit were, we can't know every comic, right? But we are, she's based in Arkansas, we're based in Indiana, there's a lot of cross paths, like, we do a lot of the same rooms. There is a small world of people that know each other. You at least know each other's names, right? Oh, that's a dude that does the thing. Oh, that's a female comic that plays that place.
100%.
I don't even know why I brought gender into it. That's a comic that is doing some real shit. I know you're aware, you have an awareness level, right? Of like comics who are doing festivals that you want to do, or festivals that you have done, but on different years. Like, there's a general level of like, who's at what level, a general awareness level of who's at what level. And I didn't recognize any of these motherfuckers' names. Not one person who was going after her.
It was
like, who
crazy.
the fuck are these?
I know.
People?
It's. I think they're professional comics that just graduated from college, commenting for advice on how to get to the festivals. It was. I understand, because it's such an outrageous leap, and people that don't do comedy don't know how hard it is to get into a festival, and how hard it is to become a full-time comedian.
Touring comic, yeah.
So to say both of those things in the same message, just red flag after red flag. And for these mouth breathers to just, that's what they are. They're YouTube commenters.
Yeah.
I think Facebook just breeds that sort of vitriolic conversation.
I gotta say, this is the first time I've seen it in a long time outside of like political discourse, which I'm on Facebook in a very limited way these days, where I jump on, do my post, jump off, right? I don't spend time doom scrolling on there. So maybe it still is, but I feel like in the comedy world, like I said, it's been a minute since there's been this much comedy drama on a sort of like a regional level,
I joke that I missed it, but I really don't. It is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's so silly.
Yeah. And to her credit, like, Steph, like, kind of let people just fight it out in the comment section. And then, one guy kept saying that she was deleting his comments, and she's like, I'm not even reading your comments. So it's like, I'm not, why would I be deleting, and just like this thing of like, because it spiraled out, like, and then she just kind of like, I think she just used it as a barometer on who to block from her page. It was like, okay, cool. Because I'm sure she was friends with a bunch of these comics who were commenting, because that's how they saw it. She posted it on her Facebook page. this isn't like a thing like this isn't a TikTok algorithm that it pushes to a bunch of random strangers pages, right? I mean, once it started to take off, I think, and people were commenting on it, it's the network
it's public,
grew.
so it's
Yeah.
just like your friend commented on this.
Yeah.
Then you got a snowball in your hands.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, she's used as a way to like, all right, we're gonna clean house, because like every single comedian on Facebook, we are Facebook friends with comics we've never met or know. It's just like, because I mean, I've gotten to the point now, if I've not met you, I'm not accepting your friend request. Like,
Right.
I just or if we're not talking about something, if you are messaging me about like, hey, I'm a comic from so and so, and I'm rolling through Indiana, can you hook me up with shows? Cool. We'll be Facebook friends then. We can have the conversation there.
Yep.
You know, because I do that to people too. I just sent out some messages trying to get some routing for my Colorado dates next year. And I then added that person on Facebook as a friend, right?
Yep.
We've had contact, we've had conversation, you know, I'm a person, right?
Right.
But yeah, just this, and it's something that was pointed out over and over again in the thread was every festival has very detailed instructions on how to apply to that festival.
Yes.
So
they do.
This guy was either not phrasing it correctly, like I want, like what kind of what we talked about at the beginning of this episode, like what are like the secret tips or what are some pro tips that'll make you stand out. But I don't think that's the case, because again, I mean, they're very smart, they're college educated, and they're a professional comedian.
This is important. What this person did, what this guy did was 110% wrong and ridiculous. Don't message someone with no mutual friends, like anyone, about, you know,
especially if you're a guy messaging a female comic, because they 100% have to be on the ready for this. Or, you know, like, I mean, we know plenty of female comics that have tried to, you know, like trolls have tried to torpedo their career because they did like a strong feminist joke online that went viral. And then they come out in the comment section and do all that kind of garbage. But yeah, man, like this guy could have messaged Stetson Banks, which is Steph's roommate, equal level comedian, another touring comedian. And he could have, if you know Steph, you found out Steph's name. Yeah. You found out Stetson's name. They run shows together. Yep. Like, however this guy found Steph, unless he was just looking for female comedians' pictures and thought, oh, she's attractive, I'll message her. Yeah, exactly. Not that Stetson's not attractive. He's a handsome hunk of man. So Stetson, if you were listening, I would slide into those DMs for sure, buddy. Yeah. Get it, Matt. Shoot your shot, baby. So I think, so to transition, what are some ways that are appropriate to ask for advice? Can I start public forum? Yeah, exactly. On Facebook. There's so many. If you're gonna do this shit on Facebook, there are so many comedian forums on Facebook. You could post that question. You could post that question like, "Hey, I've never done a festival before." People post this question all the time. What are festivals you recommend? Yep. And people will weigh in on their experiences on festivals they think are worth applying to. Everything he said. I mean, if he would have said I'm a full-time comic fresh out of college, how do I get into festivals? He would have got roasted. His ass would have got roasted in those forums. Right. But as a normal human being wanting to ask these questions, as a new comic wanting to find out, just get advice. That's one thing. There are public forums on Facebook, big time, that you could post those questions and get a lot of different opinions, and then sort through those to the ones that seem like they make the most sense. And then also just ask the comics in your scene. If you're a young comic and you are not, in a very nice way, not pushy, not clingy way, reaching out to the senior comics in your scene. This is a very tricky thing, because you also don't want to be clingy, needy, whiny, pushy, like all that kind of stuff. But just be a human being. Like, I've had younger comics ask me like, hey, what about this? And they'll message me, and they're younger comics in my scene. I'm always more than happy to give them the information. Right. You know, even if I don't know them super well, but I'm like, oh, I've seen them at the open mic a couple times. I know that they're trying to do this. Right. It's always amazing to me. And I don't want to get a bunch of messages from this. If Bloomington comics are listening, if Indianapolis comics, do not start flooding my inbox. But I'm always amazed when younger comics don't do that with a senior comic, where they don't at least try to get a little bit of advice, and don't ask them to review your sets or anything like that. But like a little bit, like it's the same thing. Like when you roll into a club and you do a Thursday through Saturday and there's no local comics hanging out at the club. Right. Like, even if you have kind of a shitty club, or the energy, maybe the owners, they're not working you or whatever. Like the fact that you're not there watching professionals work and learning from them, like just on that level is always something. Like it's just very different. So
I think, in smaller scenes, especially if you're just starting out, you probably don't know that you can go to your local comedy club and watch a show for free. Just tell them, I'm a comic, I've done the open mic, and they'll let you post up in the back of the room and just watch the show.
Yeah,
And
most clubs will do that. Yeah.
That's a great way to build community and actually talk to comics after the shows.
Yeah.
It's like Matt said, it is very delicate. You don't want to come off as annoying, but you're asking. I think you can harken back to the booking ask. It's like, be specific about what you want to know.
Yeah,
like if you
exactly.
just come up and they're like, how do I get booked? It's like, on what, for what, when, how,
yeah,
why?
I've gotten that exact thing so many times.
Yeah.
Like it's like, how do I get booked? And you're like, well, you're asking me like, how do you level up or whatever, and there's no easy answer to that vague of a question.
Right.
And because everyone's journey is different too,
Yeah, man.
But yes, specificity is definitely a key. And I was just joking, like if there are comics that have specific questions in my local and regional scene who do know me, we have met.
Mm-hmm.
We've breathed the same air before, even if it was through masks. Like feel free to reach out to me if you have a very specific question, and I'm more than happy to answer it. But yeah, man, I was talking about like inappropriate asks. I once had a dude that I'd never met before message me and ask me to take him on tour.
Yeah, man, I hate that.
And it's like, well, first of all, I'm not a famous enough comedian that I can take some people with me sometimes to clubs that I'm in with, right? Clubs that I've headlined a couple times that I'm in with, I can bring a feature now, right?
Yeah.
First of all, this dude asked that question years ago. I wasn't even doing that at that point. Like,
right.
Maybe one club, two clubs, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I've never even met you. Why do you not think that I have other comics that I'm friends with that I would be bringing instead? Like, I guess shoot your shot, but that's going to be a no for me, dog.
It's going to be a no for everybody. It's going to be a no for everybody. I can tell you that right now. Yeah. It's just, you can't skip the putting in the legwork. Go to your club, hang out, meet people, start hosting, it's like building momentum. Once you're in it, just keep building momentum, man. And
be nice.
Just be nice.
Don't be a creep to anyone for any reason. Don't be pushy and weird. That's the place that you work, or you're trying to work. You're trying to work it. So that's your job spot, man. So don't be DMing random females comics, sliding in there asking for, their help or offering your help, either way.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, man, you gotta think about the context of everything these days. I think this has been good. And also honestly, and this is going to sound like some bullshit, but if you are a young comic and you have questions, hit us up on social media. And
Please.
We will, if it's a good question, we'll address it in a future episode of this podcast. If you have a legitimately good question, that is, we'll probably do a speed round one where because people send in some joke questions.
Mailbag.
Yeah. But hit us up on social media. You can do that for me at Twitter at Matt alano-martin. That is all, of course it's all one word. It's Twitter. Like I said, I'm not feeling great. I'm surprised I made it this far through the podcast. MATALANO-MARTIN. You can hit me at Twitter. I have a pinned tweet. That is about the podcast, taking questions for the podcast. So just reply in there with your question and we'll try to get to it in a future episode. I will go ahead and do the same thing with my Facebook post, although that's on my personal Facebook page. Do it through Twitter. Hit me up on Twitter, my pinned tweet. Ask your question there and we will get to it in a future episode. Dwight, where can people get a hold of you and offer you video games for host spots?
Oh man, please, your brother needs some new games for 2023. So
do you have specific games that you're, and also like, are there certain games and a certain number of games that gets them all the way up to featuring for you?
Yeah. Ones that I could set to easy. I don't know. I'm not very good at video games, but yeah. Also know who you're asking, man. I suck at video games. Why are you bringing up my trauma before you ask me for something? Yeah, man. Find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I post pretty much daily. So if you comment on something, I will see it. You can ask a question there. Find me on Instagram. I'm more active on those two platforms. because I love Meta apparently. They all suck.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are both just Dwight Simmons. And I'm trying to grow this YouTube channel. So that's also just type Dwight Simmons in, and I will be the second result after a dentist.
Nice. Excellent.
So,
Yeah. And we will, for the next episode, because again, this is a work in progress. This episode, we got the paid for unlimited. We didn't have to rush through this in
Man.
40 minutes. Next episode, we will have an official email that people can send questions into the podcast. We'll set that up. We'll set up a Gmail for the podcast, and people can drop us an email there with any questions. But for right now, just hit Dwight up or hit me up on Twitter, and we'll do it that way. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Matt and Dwight Just Might. I feel like we chopped it up, man. I feel like this was a good episode.
This really was, man. This is your Jordan flu game. So I'm proud of you for getting through it.
Yeah.
You're better for it. The podcast is better for it.
Yeah, I'm going to go do some gambling now. What could possibly go wrong with that?